Welcome to Gravity Falls, everybody! I'm Dipper Pines, and this is my sister Mabel. Oh, wrong intro. Welcome to Hester Bros Cartoon Theater. I'm Alec, and this is my brother Lucas. It's Halloween month. Today, we are talking about a modern classic cartoon, Gravity Falls, and asking the question, is it for kids?
And is it for adults?
It has been a while since we did a For Kids or Adults episode, but we kind of felt like this was the perfect one. The question is posed very often, who is this show really for? It's gotten a ton of critical acclaim from places like Variety, Wired, IGN. Forbes called it the best thing on TV at the moment. I don't care how old you are. If you are not watching Gravity Falls, you're missing out on some of the cleverest, most enjoyable television you can find. Even though this is, I guess, technically a kid's show because it was on the Disney Network, you came to me in my adulthood and said, Alec, you have to watch Gravity Falls. Interestingly, this is almost one of the cartoons that reintroduced me into the world of animation now as an adult, and I would say it's like an inspiration for our show. When you showed me this, I was like, wow, there must be a lot of modern cartoons that I just haven't been paying attention to. And since then, we've done this and I found a ton. Like, we are in a golden age of animation. So I would encourage everybody to like and subscribe because we want to find these new gems of cartoons together through our channel, and we would love for you to be around with us on that ride.
Today we are specifically talking about the Halloween episode because if you didn't notice, it's the whole month of Halloween right now. This is a particularly good one. Great Halloween imagery, phenomenal plot to dive into Halloween, even though it takes place over the summer.
If you have never seen Gravity Falls, if you guys are tuning into us for the first time, first of all, watch the cartoon, especially if you've been out of the animation game in a while and you're more of a classics person. The show follows two siblings, Dipper and Mabel, as they go to spend their summer with their Uncle Stan in the town of Gravity Falls. Dipper finds this thing, it's called Journal 3, and it's so cool. It holds a dark backstory and catalogs tons of the mysteries that have happened in this town over time. Him and his sister Mabel become entrenched in this town's lore, and they just meet tons of bizarre creatures.
This episode particularly is very much like a Halloween special. It doesn't really pertain to the overarching plot.
And that's one of the reasons that I thought it was important to pick it. I feel like this is actually a really good intro into what this series is. It sort of plays on a lot of its strengths in different ways, but it doesn't spoil anything about the show either.
I disagree a little bit. I think the plot is my favorite part of the show, and all of the complexity with this building narrative with like Bill Cipher, the main antagonist. But to me, this is still like a lot of fun. So to me, this is a good example of like the filler episodes more. The reason I only say that is because I do want to take a moment to talk about how phenomenal the plot and the design of the show is. We're talking about evidence for kids or adults, right? So yes. Obviously there's a lot of fun, candy color, like kids stuff TV. And that's great, sure. But there are like secret codes that are hidden throughout the show. There's secret codes at the end title sequence and hidden throughout the whole show. And people who are keen enough can go and decipher all of these codes and figure out secret messages within the show. Or if you're like me, you just
look it up on the internet and see what other people did.
It's created by the great Alex Hirsch, and it only lasted 2 seasons because he wanted it to end there. What about this episode, which was called Summerween, put into question the For Kids or Adults thing for you?
The monster.
The Summerween trickster is the very first thing. Brief synopsis of the episode. Mabel and Dipper are the kings of Halloween where they're from, and Mabel's really stoked to do this Halloween thing. Dipper has a really weird crush on this older girl, Wendy. Her boyfriend makes fun of trick-or-treating, so then he has this whole moment of like, well, I can't be a trick-or-treater because I'm an adult. This is the kid half of the show. He decides that to lose his Summerween spirit, or Halloween spirit, whatever. And then this spirit, which is the less for kids part of the episode, the Summerween trickster shows up, sees them throwing out their loser candy, which is like your off-brand crap candy that nobody wants. And he gives them a challenge. You have to find 500 pieces of candy before the last jack-o'-lantern turns out.
It's actually a jack-o'-melon.
And it's a great mechanism to time out this whole challenge and to create a sense of tension and forced pacing on the kids. This thing is really creepy. most of what I really just wanted to talk about was just the design and the Halloween. So Halloween imagery as a whole in the episode, but the design of this villain is actually scary. At the very beginning, when he introduced himself, he literally eats a kid. Like, a kid knocks on their door to trick or treat, and he just picks him up and eats him, just throws him in his mouth and eats him. By the end of the episode, he eats Seuss also, and Seuss ends up eating the monster from his insides and bursts out like a rabid squirrel.
What's up, bro?
Which is funny, and that, like, plays with the tension, and obviously we see, like, the kid not get eaten, but then the kid just goes,
traumatized.
and I thought, like, wow, this aired on TV, and a lot of times people don't finish TV shows that are aired on cable. If you didn't finish that episode,
That kid would be dead in your mind.
if you're a parent and you watch a kid get eaten, you might be like, I think maybe we don't watch this show. And then the kid thinks that this Summerween trickster ate this kid and there's no levity and there's no resolution. I noticed in the design there's a lot of influence from
No Face.
No Face.
Yes, I wrote that down. My fiance suggested the same thing.
We find out that this monster is like the byproduct of all of the loser candy that nobody ate over the generations. When he's getting eaten by Seuss, he's like,
You actually think I taste good?
and Seuss is like,
Sure. You know.
and then he starts crying candy corn kernels. What a phenomenal animation choice. Great imagery. I love seeing the Halloween candy corn thing being used. It's funny. It's still creepy because, like, when the guy takes his mask off, his face is actually, like, even scarier without the mask. But overall, I think this character really symbolizes what this episode in particular is doing right. And it's just giving you a creepy vibe and Halloween everything throughout every moment of the episode.
Sure, unless we forget that Seuss finishes this whole journey with the last quote of the episode, where he just says,
I ate a man alive tonight.
a lot of the dialogue choices that the writers make are definitely pushing the envelope of this being a kids show.
Yeah.
Even though they're making sure that it's appropriate for kids, and, like, obviously the two main characters, Dipper and Mabel, are kids. I could see people watching the story, whether it be in this episode or other episodes, and obviously, like, it is dealing with certain plots of adolescence, which I can see, you know, you seeing and maybe being like, okay, well, this is a kids show. But there's something very relatable about the way that Dipper and Mabel grow up in this setting, where even as an adult, you sort of look back and you're kind of, like, reminiscing a little bit about maybe if you had a sibling or you went to summer camp or all of these themes that you went through. It hits home in a very real and very authentic way, I think. We did a reaction to The Ghost and Molly McGee. There's a middle school in the plot. You mentioned that you don't like cartoons that have school incorporated, but I think that's something that makes Gravity Falls very charming. There's no school. It's just two kids, like, having a summer camp adventure together and growing up in that way. To me, it doesn't feel kiddie. Mabel, despite her awkwardness, is very genuinely funny all the time. Dipper is a character who, he makes the wrong choices a lot, but you know who he is, and you're like, if you weren't this person, then you've seen this person before.
I could critique a little bit about that. This is not my favorite episode. I will say, like, I like it as a Halloween special, but it's not the best Gravity Falls episode by any means. Dipper
is kind of a dick
in this episode.
Oh, I want to go to this party for this older chick that I kind of have a crush on. So, you know, maybe we'll all just die to this, like, trickster thing.
Maybe he'll just kill us all. Like, that's not the worst.
Dude, what are you doing? Don't be such an asshole. Even if that wasn't on the line, even if that's not even, like, a pressure, like, dude, just go trick-or-treating with your sister. Don't ditch her. And then the other thing that I think is weird, also very related, is, like, what is this, like, 16-year-old girl doing inviting a 12-year-old to these, like, parties? You know,
It's very irresponsible.
I mean, there is an episode where she, like, addresses it and is like, hey, man, like, you kind of should stop doing this. And I appreciate them for doing that. But in episodes like this, where that's not happening, and Wendy's like, hey, you should come to this party. Starts at 9 p.m., you 12-year-old. That is the only thing that I will say is not phenomenal about this episode.
To be fair, Wendy is established as a character that is extremely irresponsible. It is not a surprise to me that she is making these questionable choices. I want to give us a chance to really talk about what this show offers as a whole for people who don't really know what they're getting themselves into. Like, if they only saw this episode, they're like, okay, this was fine, but I want to watch something that's edgy and different. Could you, like, give the pitch for why it is worth sticking around and watching the 2-season arc?
Oh my god, just Bill Cipher. Literally just the villain. Bill Cipher is an interdimensional trickster demon that is extremely powerful and extremely scary and has this subtle imagery. And there's this like weird plot line where Grunkle Stan, he's got a weird secret. He's got this like secret passage in his basement. I won't spoil for you what that's about. I'm sure if you're watching this, you've probably seen the show, but it gets you on the edge of your seat. You know, for a kid's Disney show, the plot line is very there, more than any other Disney show I've ever seen. Even ones that have that and do pretty well. Like, Gravity Falls is the cream of the crop.
The cream of the crop!
I think it's easily my favorite Disney show of all time.
I'd have to think about it, but I would assume I'd agree. To me, mystery shows are just exciting, especially when done right. The fact that we're getting introduced to new types of creatures in almost every episode, that there's a brand new surprise that's lurking around every corner, and just that the way that the plot progresses is so well written and gripping the farther and farther that you get into the series. It's really spectacular.
We're talking about for kids or adults, right? And I feel like it almost goes without saying what our verdict is going to be at this point. I say that it's for both. For those who have not seen the finale, 2 episodes, I will not say anything. But if you doubt for even a moment that this is not a show that pushes the boundaries for kids and is for adults, watch the finale. It is some of the most graphic horror imagery I have literally ever seen in a kid's show.
And I grew up with 90s cartoons.
If you give it a chance and start to watch enough episodes, you are gonna fall in love with the characters, whether you're a kid, whether you're an adult. So I guess you just gave your verdict. I'm ready to give mine, but I'm gonna come down
even harder than you.
This is the single best show, not just a cartoon, for both kids and adults combined. And if you are an adult wanting to get back into the animation game, I think that this is the single best starting point that could show you how awesome cartoons can be in this generation.
I'd agree 100% if it wasn't for some anime that I've seen. But you haven't seen those, so I agree with you from your worldview.
That's fair. I could put a Western show caveat on there. There's nothing that inherently makes a cartoon for kids except the construct of it. At some point down the line, people deciding that cartoons were going to be a childish medium. And Japan doesn't treat it that way, you know? Anime is, like, very mainstream, very much for adults. Western audiences are coming around, but I mean, I also think that there's something to be said for shows that are able to be for 2 audiences. And I think it's one of the hardest things to do, is really make something awesome that anybody can sit down and enjoy. Those tend to be my favorite shows. I want to be watching an awesome thing that I could spend time with anybody and have a really good time, laugh with, savor the moment. That's what Gravity Falls is to me. It's for everybody. 100%. And I'm really not screwing around with that. I genuinely believe it with every fiber of my soul. I can't say enough about Gravity Falls, and I really wanted to hammer that point home as much as possible.
I love it. And quick note on that philosophy of what is for kids or adults. If something is for kids, in my opinion, it's along the lines of Dora the Explorer. You know, it's educational.
Yes.
It's speaking to an audience whose, development of language and concepts is very much not the same as an adult. So that makes a little bit of sense. But when it comes to a kid's cartoon that's for children who are, they can understand concepts, I think we don't give kids enough credit with what they can handle and what complex issues they can deal with. And that's what I love about Gravity Falls, is because it's saying look, yeah, this is a little scary. There's a scene where we literally rearrange somebody's face with their other facial organs, and it's terrifying, but they can handle that. And I think that that's a really healthy thing to foster in kids, and to have these heavy concepts of growing up. We talk about it in this very episode. There will be a time when you turn 14, and the span from 12 to 14 is a crazy fast developing period in your life, and a lot of things change. Covering that change and making people feel that change, it's really hard to do it in a nuanced way, because usually it's adults trying to remember what that was like and trying to do that well. But I think Gravity Falls does that really well. They take this really complex, well-written, well-woven story, and they give it to kids because kids can handle it, and they love it, and it shows that they love it. We have more shows like this now, like Owl House and She-Ra, Adventure Time. I could go on, anime too. We're realizing that we shouldn't underestimate what kids can handle.
Yes, this show would not be better if they intentionally tried to cut kids out of it. I think it would ruin the show.
Yeah, I agree. If they had tried to hone in on either demographic any more than they did, it would it would have definitely made it not as good, 100%.
Well, Lucas, let's finish this up here. The charity that we're going to plug this week is called the Defenders of Wildlife. They work to protect and restore endangered species. Thought that would be fun because of all the endangered creatures that we find in the Gravity Falls series. Link is in the description if you are passionate about that cause. Our social media, please follow it. I hate doing the social media, and it would mean a lot to me if more people followed us so that the efforts that I'm going to would feel a little bit more worthwhile. Also, check out our Discord because you can interact with other cartoon fans.
Extra plug for the Discord. Discord's very cool. I like that better than social media. It's a lot more like humanizing of a platform, I think.
That's nice.
Subscribe. Like and subscribe. Love us.
Next week, we're going to be talking about the Grinch Halloween special. If you haven't heard of that, we highly recommend.
Oh, if you're going to want to be high, for sure.
All right, thanks, everybody. We will see you next time.
Later!